Desultory Thoughts and Reflections ****** Transcriber's note. New original cover, art included with this ebook is granted to the public domain. Desultory Thoughts and Reflections. Vivere cogita, estimated life is measured but by thoughts and affections. They are the sun that shadows the dial. New York, printed by J. P. Wright, 18, New Street. Desultory Thoughts and Reflections. By the Countess of Blessington. New York, published by Wiley and Putnam, No. 161 Broadway. 1839. Desultory Thoughts and Reflections. Knowledge of life. A profound knowledge of life is the least enviable of all species of knowledge, because it can only be acquired by trials that make us regret the loss of our ignorance. Being understood. When we find that we are not liked, we assert that we are not understood, when probably the dislike we have excited proceeds from our being too fully comprehended. Sacrifices. Some persons are capable of making great sacrifices, but few are capable of concealing how much the effort has cost them, and it is this concealment that constitutes their value. Music. Music often awakens long-sleeping echoes in the soul, and, though never heard before, seems familiar to the ear, as some voice, loved in childhood, remembered in a dream. Minds. Some minds may be said to resemble musical instruments. They possess powers, and if judiciously touched, give forth sweet sounds. Lovers. Ninon de L'Enclos observes, that if a man gives a woman wealth, it is only a proof of his generosity, but that if he gives her his time, it is a proof of his love. This, however, cannot be considered as a conclusive proof, for, in giving their time, many men bestow that which is of no value to themselves or others. Love and enthusiasm. Love and enthusiasm are always ridiculous, when not reciprocated by their objects. Path of life. Spontaneously, we render the path of life a weary one, and plant all the thorns that obstruct it, while the few stray flowers that cheer us arise in some extraneous and contingent agency. Minds. The minds of the young resemble new wine in a state of fermentation and effervescence, but the minds of the mature resemble old wine, which has lost its fiery particles, and retains only its strength and raciness. Knowledge of the world. The knowledge of the world that enables us to escape from errors can only be acquired by an experience which costs us many of our most cherished illusions. Character of man. As storm following storm, and wave succeeding wave, give additional hardness to the shell that encloses the pearl, so do the storms and waves of life add force to the character of man. Precocious wisdom. Precocious wisdom is not desirable for youth, lest, like the rash blossom which ventures forth too early, it should be nipped ere it has strength to resist adversity. Strength of mind. By relying on our own resources, we acquire mental strength, but, when we lean on others for support, we are like an invalid, who, having accustomed himself to a crutch, finds it difficult to walk without one. Contemplation. Contemplation displays to us the past events of our lives, which, during their occurrence, we saw not, as a calm clear day shows us the rocks and wrecks of the sea, which we discovered not while tossed on the turbulent surface of the waters. Philosophy and religion. Philosophy was a boon bestowed by reason to console mankind for the inevitable misfortunes of life, but being found insufficient for the task, she granted the blessing of religion, a younger, a more gentle, and infallible consoler. Politeness. A substitute for goodness of heart. Conscience. A starving man, who committed theft, was asked by a pious person if his conscience had not cried out to him to forbear. Alas, replied he, if it did, the cries of my stomach were so much louder, that they prevented me from hearing those of conscience. Presentiments. Presentiments are the heart's prophecies, for the heart is a sibyl deeply skilled in all the mysteries of her own realm. Youth and age. Youth resembles a Claude Lorraine glass, which imparts to all objects its own beautiful tints, but age is like a magnifying lens, which leaves no defect unseen. Confidences. Confidences are more frequently reposed in persons through a want of discretion, than from excess of friendship, and are oftener betrayed through incontinency of speech than from motives of treachery. Common mistakes. The common herd of mankind mistake anarchy for liberty, ostentation for generosity, passion for love, and vanity for pride, yet how widely different are they all. Judgment of women on men. Women are prone to judge their lovers' hearts, but by their own, which little semblanceth with man's rough nature. Hence they love them for the qualities they give them, not for those they have, which rarely merit to be loved. Love. Love in France is a comedy, in England a tragedy, in Italy an opera seria, and in Germany a melodrame. Gratitude. Gratitude was fancifully said to be the memory of the heart, but, alas, for poor human nature, hearts are more than suspected to have wondrous short memories. Men and women. A woman's head is always influenced by her heart, but a man's heart is generally influenced by his head. Life. Life would be as insupportable without the prospect of death, as it would be without sleep. Maturity. It is in maturity, when the passions are calmed, and reason exerts her influence, that the attachments we form possess the most stability. We expect less, and pardon more. The disappointments we have experienced teach us to value what we have attained, even while regretting what we have lost. The poetry of life. The poetry of our lives is, like our religion, kept apart from our everyday thoughts, neither influence us as they ought. We should be wiser and happier, if, instead of secluding them in some secret shrine in our hearts, we suffered their humanizing qualities to temper our habitual words and actions. Honor and chastity. Honor is the peculiar and essential virtue of men, and chastity that of women. Both are lost if these qualities are impeached. Society. Society punishes not the vices of its members, but their detection, like the Spartans, who punished the discovery of theft, and not the crime. Ideas. A man with a vast number of ideas, without strong power of reasoning, resembles a general incapable of directing his troops. Selfish men. The selfish man believes that by closing his heart against his fellows, and centering in self every thought and feeling, he escapes much suffering. But his egotistical calculations are invariably defeated, for his contracted sympathies being all directed to one focus, he so aggravates the ills he endures, that he expends on self alone more painful pity than the most enthusiastic philanthropist devotes to mankind. Illusions. Each illusion that dies gives birth to a posthumous one, which we believe to be less perishable than its predecessor, until we see it similarly fade and expire. Happiness. Happiness, like youth and health, is rarely appreciated until it is past. Solitude. In solitude we retain our own faults, but in society we superadd those of others. Severity to others. Some people seem to consider the severity of their censures on the errors of others as an atonement for their own. Youth. When youth has fled the furrowed brow, and we no more can trace it now beaming in every outward part, where is its refuge in the heart? Yes, there it dwells more glowing, warm, than when it lent exterior charm, keeping alive affection's fire, though it no more can love inspire. Happiness. Happiness consists, not in having much, but in being content with little. Hatred. We injure ourselves more than our enemies, by indulging hatred towards them. Memory. From out the grave of every friend we loved springs up a flower, as fabulists relate arose from the red stream of Ajax' wound, memory 'tis named, and watered by our tears, it lives and grows, until its fibers strike into the heart, nor leave it until death. Amusing men. We never respect those who amuse us, however we may smile at their comic powers. A considerable distinction exists between the amusing and the entertaining man. We laugh with one, but reflect with the other. Truth. Monarchs seldom hear truth until too late to derive profit from its knowledge. Courage. Courage defends the honor of man, modesty guards that of woman. Bores. People who talk of themselves, when you are thinking only of yourself. Sympathy. Each thought of mine an echo found in his. Our minds were like two mirrors placed on walls fronting each other, and reflecting back the selfsame objects, such as sympathy. Pleasure. Pleasure is like a cordial, a little of it is not injurious, but too much destroys. Friends. Friends are the thermometers by which we may judge the temperature of our fortunes. Idea. Ideas are the seeds of thought, but they do not produce flowers unless the soil where they are sown is fertile. Aristocracy. The aristocracy are prone to ridicule the elevation of men of the middle class to high official situations, not reflecting that it is easier to transmute men of talents into gentlemen than it is to convert mere gentlemen into men of talents. Want of thought. Je écrirai assez bien si je savais penser, was the confession of a French writer, one which might with truth be repeated by the greater part of modern authors, in whose works we find a superfluity of words, and a paucity of ideas. It is as though they wrote to avoid thought, instead of revealing and engendering it. Their works resemble certain trees, on which is found an abundance of leaves, but little fruit. Wisdom. Wisdom is e'er the harbinger of death. It comes not till it long has been invoked, to wean us gently from the world's vain joys and show the yawning grave that waits for us. Admiration. Those who are formed to win general admiration are seldom calculated to bestow individual happiness. Virtue. Virtue, like a dowerless beauty, has more admirers than followers. Forgiveness. Forgiveness of injuries is apt to draw on the forgiver repetition of wrongs, as people reason thus: if he has forgiven so much, he can forgive more. Trials. The spirit in which we receive trials either increases or diminishes their bitterness. Fortitude and resignation disarm them of their sharpest darts, while anger and vindictiveness only augment their poignancy. Principles. A man without principles is like a ship without a compass. Truth. Mendiciliquens respects truth so much that he seldom approaches it. Nay, you are wrong, for he is known to take great liberties with it. An unpopular man. An unpopular man is he who forms few friendships in life, but, en revanche, cultivates many enmities. Time. Time, fell destroyer of all earthly good, sworn foe to beauty, innocence, and joy, thou leavest us naught but dull and sad experience, whichever comes when we no longer need it, and keeps aloof when we require its aid. Knowledge. Knowledge should be acquired gradually, and by study, for the superficial knowledge, which is the result of the promiscuous and unregulated adoption of the discoveries of others, affects the mind, as the sudden removal of a person with weak eyes from a darkened room into a blaze of light does the sight. It overpowers and confuses. Love. Love cannot exist in the heart of woman unless modesty is its companion, nor in that of man unless honor is its associate. Vices. The vices of the rich and great are mistaken for errors, and those of the poor and lowly, for crimes. Virtue. Virtue should virtuous seem, nor wear a mask of levity, as giddy maids put on at carnivals, showing unchaste exterior, though innocence doth still reside within. Ingratitude. So inherent is ingratitude in man, that it is chiefly in affliction that he lifts his soul to his Creator. In joy and prosperity, he is prone to forget him. Balm for misfortunes. To sleep by night and dream by day is the balm of misfortune. Society. Those can most easily dispense with society, who are the most calculated to adorn it. They only are dependent on it who possess no mental resources, for though they bring nothing to the general mart, like beggars, they are too poor to stay at home. Courage. Many people mistake audacity for courage, yet they are dissimilar. Catiline was audacious, and Caesar courageous. Superstition. As darkness encourages the growth of reptiles, so, in an inverse manner, do the creatures of superstition promote the growth of darkness. Self-examination. Let us call back our long-departed years, and ask if we employed them as we ought. Will they not tell a most reproachful tale, of wasted hours, of blessings never prized till lost, and then ungratefully resigned, with murmurs, and not thanks, that they were lent? Society. Those who suffer their happiness to depend on the futile pleasures of society, instead of the resources of their own minds, resemble birds, who, with the power of soaring into the pure regions of the sky, descend and loiter amid the dust of the earth, at the risk of being snared or destroyed by every vagrant urchin. Imagination. The heart is often made answerable for the follies of the imagination. Flowers. Some flowers absorb the rays of the sun so strongly that in the evening they yield slight phosphoric flashes. May we not compare the minds of poets to these flowers, which, imbibing light, emit it again in a different form and aspect? Sorrow. Sorrow and time can teach what naught else teaches, more than philosopher or priest e'er preaches. Truth and physic. Truth and physic, two unpalatable things, never well received, though administered with a good intention. Cunning and vanity. Cunning is a substitute for wisdom, adopted by the weak of intellect, as vanity is for pride. Precocious wisdom. Precocious wisdom is almost as much to be deprecated for youth as the premature maladies of age. Neither should arrive before the proper season, as their presence indicates constitutional debility. Skeptics. Skeptics, like dolphins, change when dying. Scandal. Scandal is the offspring of envy and malice, nursed by society, and cultivated by disappointment. The selfish man. The selfish man may be compared to those antediluvian forests in the wilds of America, which are nourished by their own dead leaves. In like manner, does he feed on those feelings, which ought to be devoted to the promotion of the general good. Female education. The whole system of female education tends more to instruct women to allure than to repel, yet how infinitely more essential is the latter art. As rationally might the military disciplinarian limit his tuition to the mode of assault, leaving his soldiery in entire ignorance of the tactics of defense. Superstition. Superstition is but the fear of belief, religion is the confidence. Society and solitude. In society we learn to know others, but in solitude we acquire a knowledge of self. Happiness. We are so little formed for happiness, that, if the present offers nothing to mar it, we look back to the past, or forward to the future, for some subject of chagrin. Authors. An author should be judged of by his works, rather than by his conversation, for the latter takes its color from those with whom he converses, whereas his writings, being the fruit of solitude, bear the tint only of his own mind. Ambitious people. There are no persons capable of stooping so low as those who desire to rise in the world. Iconoclast. Darius was a matter-of-fact man, a moral iconoclast, who waged war against every image the fancy presented. Patience. Patience is a plant of slow growth, but it bears precious fruit, and is the only palliation in affliction. Envy. It is easier to pardon the faults than the virtues of our friends, because the first excite in us a self-complacency always agreeable, and the second, a sense of humiliation, which makes us dislike the inflictor. Vice and virtue. Vice is sometimes more courageous than virtue, because it has less to lose. Forgiveness of enemies. We more frequently pardon injuries from forgetfulness of them than from generosity, and many enemies are reconciled more through weakness of memory than goodness of heart. Faith. It is when we most suffer that we most believe the existence of that power which can wound or heal. Infirmities of genius. The infirmities of genius are often mistaken for its privileges. Indulgence towards others. If we examined our own faults attentively, we should have less time to detect, and more inclination to pardon, those of others. Affections. The affections of some hearts resemble the sacred Indian tree, whose pendant branches make themselves a root and a tie to the earth. Appetite. The rich suffer from want of appetite, the poor from excess. Pardon. Great injuries pardoned preclude the enjoyment of happiness between the pardoner and pardoned, for the one is vested with a superiority that wounds the self-love of the other, who, though he may admire the generosity of him who forgives, can love him no more. Society. People use in society a set of commonplace subjects and thoughts, which they exchange, as they expend the small coin with which they have provided their purses for the day, reserving deep feeling, and elevated sentiments, for home consumption, as they reserve their wealth for themselves, rather than for their friends. Fame. High fame's a target, at which all let fly the darts of envy. Who can miss a mark that seems, but reared to tempt a practiced hand, offering the aim that most allures mankind? Fortitude and resignation. Fortitude enables us to encounter trials, and resignation to bear them. The brave man possesses fortitude, but the Christian only has resignation. Faults. We are more prone to murmur at the punishment of our faults than to lament them. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is a salve for the wounds inflicted by unkindness, while rancor but serves to keep them unhealed. Polished men. The society of polished men, like smooth, even roads, renders the journey of life more easy and agreeable, but that of unpolished men, like rough roads, makes all its ruts and inequalities painfully felt. Resignation. Resignation is sometimes mistaken for happiness, though never found until its death. Anger. Anger banishes reflection, but its consequences recall it. Society. Be prosperous and happy, never require our services, and we will remain your friends. This is not what society says, but it is the principle on which it acts. Life. Life is to the unhappy as a prison, from whose gloom they cannot escape, while to the happy, it resembles a vast palace filled with all that can delight. The prison may be rendered endurable by resignation, but the palace loses some of its bright coloring and gilding every day, until naught but faded remnants of its pristine beauty remain. Futurity. One of the best gifts of Providence is the veil that conceals futurity. Dust. No dust affects the eyes so much as gold dust. False wit. False wit, like false money, only passes current with those who have no means of comparison. Politics. Such is the tergiversation in politics at present, that politicians should say with regard to them, what Voltaire said of systems: Illinois faut toujours se réserver le droit de rire le lendemain de ses idées de la veille. Fame. Fame is like truth, still questioned and denied, the more it is obvious, yet survives its foes. Love and jealousy. Love often reillumes his extinguished flame in the torch of jealousy. Luxuries. Our luxuries and pleasures are the chains that civilization throws around us to attach us to earth. The coarse-minded submit to wear them, forgetting that man was formed for nobler ends, but the elevated and refined cast them off, and aspire to a purer existence. Love. Humboldt notices that the streams in America run languidly in the night, and await the rising of the sun to quicken their flight. Love is to the heart what the sun is to the American streams, it moves languidly in its absence. Short memories. There are no memories so short as those of the parvenu, and the ungrateful man, the first forgets himself, and the second his friends. Despotism and democracy. Despotism subjects a nation to one tyrant, democracy to many. Demoralization. One of the most marked characteristics of our day is a reckless neglect of principles, and a rigid adherence to their semblance. Society. Society rarely pardons those who have discovered the emptiness of its pleasures, and who can live independent of it and them. Associates. We herd with the gay in our days of happiness, but turn to the sympathizing when misfortune overtakes us, as we seek the festive hall in our hours of mirth, and fly to the solitude of our chamber in those of sorrow. Respect. We are never so jealous of the respect of others, as when we have forfeited our own. Satire. Satire often proceeds less from ill nature than from the desire of displaying wit. Style. To praise the style of an author more than his thoughts, is like commending a woman for her dress more than for her person. Style, like dress, should be appropriate, and not detract attention from what it was meant to adorn. Declaimers against the world. They declaim most against the world who have most sinned against it, as people generally abuse those whom they have injured. Rough men. Rough men have all their seams on the outside, and they rub against and incommode those who come in contact with them. Faith. We are more prone to persecute others for their faith than to make sacrifices to prove our own. Reason. Reason dissipates the illusions of life, but does not console us for their departure. Sorrow. Sorrow is to youth what experience is to maturity. Revolutions. Revolutions are like earthquakes. If they overturn much that is faulty, they destroy also much that is good. Destiny. Destiny is a phantom of our own creation, like the monsters children first imagine, and then fear. Philosophy. Socrates termed philosophy the preparation for death, but should it not rather be styled the patient endurance of life? Bon mots. It was said of, that his conversation was a tissue of bon mots, yes, said, but remember, it has nothing but bon mots, and though a few spangles may ornament a dress, a garment wholly covered with them is fatiguing to the eye. Virtue. The virtue that repels by its severity, makes few converts, but that which attracts by its charity, incites all to esteem, if not to follow its precepts. Kings and beauties. Kings never hear the voice of truth until they are dethroned, nor beauties, until they have abdicated their charms. Flowers. Flowers are the bright remembrances of youth. They waft back with their bland and odorous breath the joyous hours that only young life knows, ere we have learned that this fair earth hides graves. They bring the cheek that's mouldering in the dust again before us, tinged with health's own rose. They bring the voices we shall hear no more, whose tones were sweetest music to our ears. They bring the hopes that faded one by one, till naught was left to light our path but faith, that we too, like the flowers, should spring to life, but not, like them again, ere fade or die. Age. It is strange that when youth gives us the prospect of a long life, we seldom think of rationally providing for its enjoyment. But when the term of it has been abridged by the flight of its best years, we become anxious to secure the comforts of the brief portion that remains to us. Poets. Poets, it has been said, form the aristocracy of intelligence. They are also the chemists of sentiment, who analyze and purify it. Passion. Some minds are formed to mount, with eagle wing, above the common herd, content to dwell without a wish beyond the joys of sense, till love, resistless love, assails their hearts, and now no longer soaring o'er the crowd, lark-like, they build their nests upon the earth. 'Tis thus that passion ever brings us down, making our minds wings, thoughts, of no avail. Revolutions. Sober-minded people prefer enduring the evils of a despotism, which they know, to risking those of a subversion on whose consequences they cannot calculate. Despotism pursues her course orderly and systematically, while sedition hurries along, sweeping away with much that is bad still more that is estimable. Modesty. Modesty, the attendant of virtue, is frequently mistaken for shame, which is one of the attributes of vice. Cunning. Cunning is the poor substitute for wisdom, which weak minds adopt, but it is like the counterfeit which the forger strives to pass for the pure coin. Politeness. Nothing is more dissimilar than natural and acquired politeness. The first consists in a willing abnegation of self, the second, in a compelled recollection of others. Great men. Mountains appear more lofty, the nearer they are approached, but great men, to retain their altitude, must only be viewed from a distance. Mourners. It is surprising that a regulation has not been made to exclude persons in the garb of mourning from scenes of gaiety, lest the somber hue of their dress give rise to sadness. But probably the omission has proceeded from a consciousness that the spectators are as little moved by the trappings of grief as the wearers by the sentiment. Fortune. The wheel of fortune, being guided by a blind goddess, often runs into deep ruts, and thus casts up what is impure. Men of genius. Men of genius, who hold out lights to mankind, are used by them as are the mockler bearers at the Roman carnival by the populace, each of whom strives first to illume his torch and theirs, and then to extinguish it. Generous and selfish minds. A generous mind identifies itself with all around, but a selfish one identifies all things with self. Friends. Our friends always wish us to be something which we are not. It is only our enemies that wish us to remain as we are. Prejudices. Prejudices are the chains forged by ignorance to keep men apart. Appearances. We are judged not by the virtues we possess, but by the indications of them which we assume. Like the style adopted for epistolary usage, in which we sign ourselves the obedient servants of persons we have no value for, so the semblance of virtue imposes on many, and satisfies all. Pleasures. Pleasures are like those mountains which charm us when beheld from a distance, but lose all the beauty of their deceitful hue when approached near. Conceit. It is usually the most conceited people who take offense at the affectation of others. Friends. Friends, like wine, require to be kept before use. Gratitude. Gratitude is a prospective, rather than a retrospective virtue. Virtue. We seldom attain virtue until we have been purified by affliction, as only martyrs become saints. Judgment of works. The frame of mind in which we read a work often influences our judgment of it. The predominant feeling of the moment colors all that we read, and we are often surprised on a second perusal to find no longer either the merits or defects which we supposed it to contain. Ambition. As the pearl, which is the object of universal admiration, is produced by the disease of the oyster, so do many of the most illustrious actions originate in that mental disease, an overweening ambition. Genius. Men of genius may be said to reside in an illuminated and unapproachable palace of crystal, which, while it displays their brightness, reveals also certain small blemishes, which are rendered disproportionately conspicuous by the contrast of light, while ordinary mortals dwell in opaque residences, in which no ray discloses the grave faults of mediocrity. Knowledge of the world. We betray a profound knowledge of the world by withdrawing from it when misfortune assails us. Weak men. A weak man will sustain afflictions that destroy a strong one, as the willow which yields its pliant branches to the blast escapes the destruction of the oak that resists it. Wit. Wit is the lightning of the mind, reason the sunshine, and reflection the moonlight, for as the bright orb of the night owes its luster to the sun, so does reflection owe its existence to reason. Virtue. It is more difficult to convince the vicious that virtue exists, than to persuade the good that it is rare. Works. The works of Vapidus might be said not to be the overflowing of a full mind, but the dregs of an exhausted one. Public. We have a reading, a talking, and a writing public. When shall we have a thinking? Civilization. Civilization begets vices, but the want of it occasions crimes. Affliction. The first heavy affliction rends the veil of illusion, and lets us behold the dark side of life. Passions. The passions which have stimulated us to crime, ultimately die of satiety, leaving us when too late with a sense of our transgressions, unmitigated by the artful palliations and delusions which originally conduced to them. Genius. Genius is like the eagle which doth make abode in solitude, and, perched on high, looks down forgetful of all meaner birds. Mediocrity. Mediocrity is only offensive when accompanied by pretension, because it then wounds our vanity by implying that it thought itself capable of deceiving us. Philosophy. The philosophy, which has not been acquired in society, will rarely enable us to resist its injustice, as a person theoretically taught to swim will find his knowledge of little avail if he fall into a river. Good talkers. To be listened to with attention, and to acquire the reputation of a good talker, never speak of yourself, but always in implied praise of those you address, or in pungent satire of their contemporaries. Premature wisdom. The premature wisdom of youth resembles the forced fruit of our hothouses. It looks like the natural production, but has not its flavor or raciness. Men of genius. How must a neglected man of genius, conscious of his own powers, pity those who cannot appreciate him, and who bestow what is his due on mere pretenders. Popularity. Those who have been the idols of the populace generally end by becoming its victims, for the multitude resemble children who build castles of cards, only for the pleasure of destroying them with a breath. Poor. A term of reproach in England, and of pity in most other countries. Metaphysics. Metaphysics, a science, the study of which proves that to be incomprehensible which was before only suspected of being so. Prosperity. As the fabled cup of the poet was said to be productive of good or evil, according to the lip that pressed it, so is prosperity productive of virtue or vice, according to the nature of him who possesses it. Flattery. Strabo asserts that a species of honey was produced at Pontus, which, owing to the bees having fed on aconite and hemlock, was poisonous. May we not liken flattery to this poison, sweet, but destructive? Faults. No human being is exempt from faults nor destitute of virtues. The wicked, who are many, will quickly detect the first, and the good, who are but few, will alone discern the second. Hence men's faults will always be more known than their virtues. Belief in goodness. We give credit to others for just as much goodness as we ourselves possess. Mere mortals. There are some mortals whose bodies are but as the sepulchres of their dead hearts. Poets and astronomers. Poets view nature as a book, in which they read a language unknown to common minds, as astronomers regard the heavens and therein discover objects that escape the vulgar ken. Grief. Grief is our natural state, and joy but comes like gleams of sunshine in a winter day, showing the darkness of the lowering clouds that threaten to obscure its waning luster. Grief shares our pillow, colors even our dreams, awakens when we wake, and through the day sits by us, calling memory to her aid, that she, by whispering of the happy past, may make the gloomy present still more dark. Philosophers. Men who expect little enjoyment in life, and who are therefore not disappointed. Money. Money is the direct or indirect cause of nearly all crimes. By the possession of it the rich are enabled to commit them, and through the want of it the poor are excited into the adoption of a similar course. Virtue. Horne Tooke said of intellectual philosophy, that he had become better acquainted with it, as with the country, though having sometimes lost his way. May not the same be said of virtue? For never is it so truly known or appreciated as by those who, having strayed from its path, have at length regained it. Qualities. Those who are poor in good qualities, assume their appearance, as persons who are not sufficiently rich to buy jewels, procure false ones. Peace of mind. Though peace of mind does not constitute happiness, happiness cannot exist without it, our serenity being the result of our own exertions, while our happiness is dependent on others, hence the reason why it is so rare, for, on how few can we count? Our wisdom, therefore, is best shown in cultivating all that leads to the preservation of this negative blessing, which, while we possess it, will prevent us from ever becoming wholly wretched. Arithmetic. A science differently studied by fathers and sons, the first generally confining themselves to addition, and the second to subtraction. Sacrifices. More sacrifices originate in ostentation than generosity. Adversity. As bees can breed no poison, though they suck the deadliest juices, so the noble mind, though forced to drain the cup of misery, can yield but generous thoughts and noble deeds. Grief. Desperate is the grief of him whom prosperity having elated and hardened, feels the first arrow of affliction strike at his heart, through the life of the object dearest to him on earth. Solitude. Hail, solitude! The nurse of high-born thought, the strengthener of our virtues, the best friend to shield us from temptations which await where thou art not, and lead us far from peace. Reflection. If we could bring ourselves to consider self, but as a subordinate atom in the great mass that forms the world, we should perhaps bear our troubles with more equanimity. But such is our vanity, that each considers himself the center of a little world of his own. Melancholy. There are certain hearts in which the germ of melancholy is implanted even in their earliest youth, and maturity only strengthens it. On such persons, the inevitable ills of life fall with a weight, that, if it crush them not wholly, leaves them eternally bruised in spirit. Age. If age deprives us of our pleasures, it also deadens our sense of misfortunes, by subduing the acuteness of our sensibility. Politeness. Politeness may prevent the want of wit and talents from being observed, But wit and talents cannot prevent the discovery of the want of politeness. Age? Oh! Reverence grey hairs, they tell a tale of heavy trials, sore afflictions borne, for none e'er wore these harbingers of death, without being schooled in all life's bitter truths. Fatality. Fatality is another name for misconduct. Qualities. There are some qualities in our natures rendered noxious, or noxious by their encounter with others, just as various medicines lose or receive power by an intermixture. Storms. Storms in the heart generally make a wreck of peace. Qualities. There are as many ruined by their good qualities as enriched by their bad. Satire. Satire, like conscience, reminds us of what we often wish to forget. Faults. Our faults are lessons writ for other men, who, reading them, are taught at our expense, nor thank us for the knowledge they attain, though bought at heavy cost of woe to us. Wisdom. Wisdom is lulled to sleep by pleasure, but awakens at the touch of sorrow. Wit. Those who have no wit are prone to doubt that of others. Self-knowledge. It is by self-knowledge that we prevent the seeds of evil from arising in our minds, and making that a wilderness of weeds, which might have become a garden of precious flowers. Friends. It requires sunshine to see our friends, for they become invisible when our horizon is clouded. Friend and wife. Give me a friend, within whose well-poised mind experience holds her seat. But let my bride be innocent as flowers that fragrance shed, yet know not they are sweet. Advice. Most people seem to imagine that advice, like physic, to do good must be disagreeable. The future. A consolation for those who have no other. Time. Time is a stream in which there is no mooring the barks of life, because there is no casting anchor in it. Writer. When an artist writes history, he draws on his imagination, and when he gives us poetry, trusts only to his memory. False appearances. We cover our actions with a sort of veil, which, like the varnish on pictures, gives them an artificial luster that serves to soften their defects. Prejudices. Few people look on any object as it really is, but regard it through some fantastic prism presented by their own prejudices, which invest it with a false color. Pride. Pride has seldom a just medium, men have either too much or too little of it. An excess, though most offensive to the spectator, is the least injurious to its possessor, for it saves him from the commission of all actions that beget humiliation, while a deficiency continually entails it upon him. Praise. Praise is the only gift for which people are really grateful. Time. Time is the true lethe, in which is engulfed the recollection of our sorrows. Guardians. The best guardian for a woman's happiness is her husband's love, and for her honor her own affection. Passion. Passion is a tyrant strong only through the weakness of his slaves. The art of pleasing. The most certain art of pleasing people with us is to make them pleased with themselves. Grief. Grief lengthens our nights, but shortens our days. Plagiarisms. Borrowed thoughts, like borrowed money, only reveal the poverty that compelled the loan. Happiness. Happiness resembles the bird of paradise, which is said never to be seen but at a distance. Friends and enemies. While we value the praise of our friends, we should not despise the censures of our enemies, as, from the malice of the latter, we frequently learn our faults, which the partiality of the former led them to overlook. Sorrow. Sorrow sets her seal on the brows of those she has stricken, and, like Freemasons, they know each other by a sign, unintelligible to the uninitiated, even when pleasure spreads her fascinations around them. Self-knowledge. Rentres en vous-même, vous y trouverez les dieux, was the advice of an ancient philosopher. How few have ever entered into the depth of their own minds, which are to them as undiscovered springs in the abysses of the earth. Enter into your own mind, and if you find not the gods there, you may, by constant examination and correction, render it worthy of becoming their residence. Conversation. Conversation is the legs on which thought walks, and writing, the wings by which it flies. Misfortune. Misfortune, though difficult to be borne, has some advantages. It precludes us from fear of the future, proves the sincerity of friends, and even reconciles us to the approach of death, while happiness, however grateful during its brief tenure, is too frequently poisoned by the dread of its interruption. Home. The heart turns to home, even as the tortoise, wherever it may be placed, turns its head towards its native element, and tries to regain it. Politics. Politics is a science, which no one believes those who differ with him to understand. Passion. Passion conducts to vice, and sentiment leads to virtue. Mistakes. Hardness of heart is frequently mistaken for firmness of soul, a want of imagination, for reason, and obstinacy, for strength of character, yet how utterly unlike are they all. Ostentation. To appear rich, we become poor. Men and women. Men resemble the trees of earth, sturdy and full of strength, but women resemble the flowers, fair and fragile, and cherish the more because they are delicate. Ostentation. Ostentation produces more sacrifices than generosity. Conversation. The conversation of some persons resembles occasional gleams of sunshine, piercing an opaque cloud. The light is only sufficient to make the general darkness visible. Opinion. All desire, but few are willing to pay the price of, the good opinion of the world. Fear. He who fears not, is to be feared. Middle age. Middle age is an isthmus between youth and death. Moral courage. Those only can explore the profoundest depths of suffering, who have moral courage sufficient to resist it, as that physical force, which augments the violence of fever, enables the patient to survive it. The intenseness of maladies, mental and bodily, is proportioned to the robustness of those condemned to sustain them, and the weak escape, or only slightly experience, the ills which the strong surmount or sink beneath. Thought. Les grandes pensées viennent du cœur, was the observation of a reflecting mind. All that touches the heart gives rise to thoughts more elevated than those that originate only in the head. Celebrity and notoriety. Celebrity and notoriety are frequently mistaken for each other, yet nothing can be more distinct. A great man becomes celebrated, a bad one, notorious. Memories. Some memories are powerfully retentive of injuries, but totally oblivious of benefits. Trials. Great trials demand, and are generally met by courage, for we summon all our energies to support them. But it is the everyday minor cares of life that weary the temper and irritate the health, because singly, and in detail, they do not appear sufficiently important to induce us to rally our force to encounter them. As the sailor, who, having ploughed the ocean in its fiercest moods, returns to perish in the stream that wantons before his cottage home, so many a mind that has withstood the most severe trials, has been broken down by a succession of ignoble vexations. Courage. Courage is often but the effect of despair, for we cease to fear when we have ceased to hope. Beauty. Beauty without religion is the most dangerous gift that nature can bestow on woman, and talents without principles, the most pernicious to man. Thought. Thought rarely dwells in the robust of frame, but chooses those whose nerves less stubborn are, and who, unknowing sensual impulses, abstracted keep, freed from ignoble thrall of pleasures, that debase men into brutes. Coquettes. Coquettes when old, like Penelope with her web, pass half the night in undoing the labors of the day. Malice. Malice is the spur of wit, good nature the bridle. Mediocrity. If mediocrity precludes men from attaining distinction, it does not prevent their acquiring popularity, because the mass of mankind are disposed to like those who can excite neither rivalry nor attention, and who consequently leave their own pretensions undisputed. Modern refinement. Modern refinement consists in a delicacy in words, and indelicacy of thoughts and actions. Thought. Thought sleeps, until awakened by the senses. Common sense is the most uncommon of all senses. Talents. Talents, like beauty, to be pardoned, must be unostentatious. Feelings. Feelings are always made the excuse of temper, whereas temper much more frequently influences feelings. Nature. Every production of the vegetable, animal, and moral world has its natural enemy. See how certain flowers, fruits, and plants are injured by certain insects, certain animals tormented by certain flies, and certain men by corresponding beings of their own species, who, discovering in them certain qualities, prey on them quite as mortally as do the flies and insects on the objects of their voracity. Death. We mourn the dead, as though we could not die, nor think that ere the grass grows on their graves, nay, ere our tears are dried, we may be called to quit this life, while counting on long years. Forgiveness. It is difficult not to hate those whom we have injured, because the consciousness that we have behaved unworthily humiliates us too much in our own estimation, not to impel us to avenge it on them. Necessity. Necessity has been called the mother of invention, but should she not rather be named the stepmother, for to her are invariably attributed many inexcusable actions. Esprit fort. An esprit fort might frequently, with more justice, be styled une tête foible. Experience. Experience has taught us little, if it has not instructed us to pity the errors of others, and to amend our own. Errors. They who weep over errors were not formed for crimes. Friendship. Those who would preserve a faith in friendship should never require its aid. Duties. Those who fulfill their duties, without feeling them to be irksome, are happy, but those who discharge them from a consciousness of their importance are praiseworthy. Fashion. People who fall into the stream of fashion, like those who tumble into the Mississippi River, are seldom saved from its vortex. Flattery. Flattery, if judiciously administered, is always acceptable, however much we may despise the flatterer. Death. To reconcile us to Cimmerian death, approach of which strikes terror to all hearts, the God of mercy takes what most we love, and we no longer dread to follow them. Friends. Guard, if it be possible, your friends from injuring you, lest they, by so doing, become your bitterest enemies, never forgiving the wrongs they have themselves inflicted. Passion. The hurricane of passion withers the milder feelings, even as the blast of the simoom dries up and consumes all that it passes over. Sorrow. The fountain of true poetry is sealed, and sorrow's touch alone can bid it flow, then only are its waters all revealed, for inspirations ever bought with woe. Pride. Pride prevents not the commission of unworthy actions, though it forbids the avowal of them. Happiness. In seeking happiness we overlook content, which is always attainable, while happiness, though sometimes in view, is never within reach. Genius. Genius is the gold in the mine, education the miner who elicits it. Great men. Intrepidus was a naturally, and Diplomaticus an artificially great man. The first, reposing a just confidence in his own powers, required no extraneous aid, while the latter solely depended on his implements for success or failure. Society. We must learn to bear with society, or to live without it. The latter appears the least difficult task to pursue. Boys and men. Mark well the boy, in him you see the man of future years, their instincts, tastes, the same. Time but develops that which was in him even from his cradle, it but gives more art to hide the evil, counterfeit the good, and cheat the world by seeming what is not. Hermits. People are seldom tired of the world until the world is tired of them. Blighted hopes. Like a bird with wearied pinions flying over the sea, and painfully sensible of the approach of exhaustion while yet in the midst of his career, is he who, tired of life ere half its course is past, gazes with dismay upon the gloomy waste he has still to traverse. Happiness. Such is our pride and weakness, that we consider happiness as our right, and misfortune as an injustice. A wise man, on the contrary, will consider a happy condition as a prize drawn in a lottery, which he had no right to expect, but which his good fortune secured for him. Peculiarities of minds. As some insects are said to derive their color from the leaf upon which they feed, so do the minds of men assume their hue from the studies which they select for it. The heart. The heart, like the cement of the ancient Romans, acquires hardness by time. Consolation. The truest consolation for the ills of life is the recollection of its brevity. Experience. Experience is a torch lighted in the ashes of our illusions. Difficulties. Difficulties vanquish the weak, but are vanquished by the strong. Characters. We never injure our own characters so much as when we attack those of others. Love. When one link in the chain of love is broken, its strength and security are gone. Death. When we have outlived our youth, we have little to regret in the death of our old age. It is but the release of a superannuated friend, who has outlived every other. Deathbed. We value time, but on the bed of death, when its brief sands are running to an end, oh, how we then remember with dismay our wasted hours, which, like reproachful ghosts of murdered friends, rise up and pass before us. How quickly flee the moments, precious then as moments ne'er were dear to us before, each counted with an agonizing pang as they recede, and with them, ebbing life, leaving the shrinking soul in terror dire, to meet, as best it may, the conqueror death. Contact with superior minds. It is doubtful whether advantage is derived from a constant intercourse with superior minds. If our own be possessed of power, the collision is likely to excite it into action, and original thoughts are consequently elicited. But if a great inequality exists, the inferior mind is quelled by the strong, or loses whatever features of idiosyncrasy it might once have possessed, in an unconscious subserviency to its more vigorous opponent. Confession. How many errors do we confess to our Creator, that we dare not reveal to His fallible creatures? Love. Some natures, like trees of the torrid zone, yield fruit but once, and prematurely die. No second love such hearts are formed to own, they palpitate, but once with passion sigh. Love matches. Love matches are formed by people who pay for a month of honey with a life of vinegar. Women. Women, with their bright imaginations, tender hearts, and pure minds, create for themselves idols, on which they lavish their worship, making their hearts temples, in which the false god is adored. But, alas! The object of their best and fondest feelings generally too soon proves to be of base clay, instead of pure gold, and though pity would fain intervene to veil its defects, or even to cherish it in despite of them, virtue, reason, and justice combine finally to destroy it, but in the deed, too often injure the fane in which it was enshrined. Life. Life resembles a river flowing rapidly to the ocean of eternity, and in its flight passing by brilliant, as well as somber objects, without the power of doing aught more than, for a few brief moments receiving our hue from them. Courage. A higher degree of courage is required to pardon an injury than to avenge it. In the first, the triumph is over self, the most difficult of all, but in the second, it is over another, which is always more easily achieved. Light literature. Works of light literature often have a vogue that more solid ones fail to acquire, as paper kites mount in the air, when a more consistent substance cannot ascend. Deceivers. We are born to deceive, or to be deceived. In one of these classes we must be numbered, but our self-respect is dependent upon our selection. The practice of deception generally secures its own punishment, for callous indeed must be that mind which is insensible to its ignominy. But he who has been duped is conscious, even in the very moment that he detects the imposition, of his proud superiority to one who can stoop to the adoption of so foul and sorry a course. The really good and high-minded, therefore, are seldom provoked by the discovery of deception, though the cunning and artful resent it, as a humiliating triumph obtained over them in their own vocations. Concealed grief. Concealed griefs are the most consuming, as secret maladies are the most fatal. Women. Women should not paint love, until they have ceased to inspire it. Eminent men. As high mountains attract clouds and vapors, so do eminent men attract censure. They act like the conductors placed on lofty buildings to draw the lightning from less elevated objects. Love and friendship. Love is a flower, with which we adorn our youth, but friendship is a fruit with which we solace our maturity. Pedants. Pedants are often mistaken for savants, yet the difference between them is great. One affects, the other possesses science. The pedant is to the savant what the apothecary is to the physician. One understands the means, the other both the means and the end. Wit lives in the present, but genius survives in the future. Experience enables us to detect the errors of the past, but it seldom guards us against those of the future. Envy. The vain and pretending are ever the most prone to envy, for they covet that which they would fain make people believe they possess. The past shows us but the tombs of our buried illusions and hopes. Pity. All that we bestow in pity to the unfortunate, we take away in respect. Hence, he that would be respected must never allow himself to become an object of pity. Pride and vanity. Vanity lives on the commendations of others, but pride is supported by self-respect. Hence the vain pine in solitude, while the proud retain their self-reverence and are satisfied. Weaknesses. Our weaknesses are the indigenous produce of our characters, but our strength is the forced fruit. Prodigals. Persons who never learn the difference between a shilling and a sixpence, until they want the latter. Existence. Existence is only felt to be valuable while it is necessary to some one dear to us. The moment we become aware that our death would leave no aching void in a human heart, the charm of life is gone. Women. There is a vast difference between a feminine and an effeminate woman. The first has all the gentleness of her sex, the second, all the weakness. Pleasure. Pleasure is like a cordial, a little of it is not injurious, but too much destroys. Poetry. The gleams in the poetry of some writers are like straw fires, bright, vivid, but transitory. Cosmetics. There is no cosmetic for beauty like happiness. Courtiers. The two principal requisites in a courtier are a flexible conscience and an inflexible politeness. Misfortunes. There are some misfortunes, the recollection of which floats ever uppermost in our minds, like oil thrown on water. Women. Young women ought, like angels, to pardon the faults they cannot comprehend, and old women, like saints, should compassionate, because they have endured temptations, and experienced the difficulty of resisting them. Mediocrity. In the society of persons of mediocrity, he who has the most wit will please the least, for each person will either misunderstand, or be jealous of him. Cosmetics. Cosmetics are to the face what affectation is to the manners, they impose on none, and disgust many. Men. A vicious man is governed by his appetites, a weak man by his affections, but a wise man is governed by his principles. Moralists. To amend mankind, moralists should show them man, not as he is, but as he ought to be. Women. Those women who are most loved by their own sex are precisely such as are least sought by the other. Conscience. He who takes conscience for his guide will not easily lose his way. Minds. A sensible mind applies patience to misfortunes, a frivolous one, forgetfulness. Conscience. Conscience oft slumbers, but has fearful dreams, and wakes as painfully as mourners do from the first sleep that follows the dread shock of losing one that dearer was than life. Misfortunes. They only can thoroughly compassionate misfortune who have drunk from its bitter cup, for how can the prosperous freely sympathize in that which they have never experienced, and consequently cannot understand? Youth and maturity. Youth is pliant and elastic. If it receives impressions easily, they are as easily effaced, but maturity is rigid, and, admitting them slowly, retains them with a proportionate tenacity. Conscience. The rewarder of virtue, an avenger of crime. Catherine of Russia. Catherine I, of Russia was called the mother of her people, but Catherine too might, with nearly equal justice, be named the wife. Mourners. They only truly mourn the dead, who endeavor so to live as to ensure a reunion with them in heaven. Memories. Some persons are so tenacious of memory, that they forget nothing but the services they have received, and the errors they have committed. Courage and virtue. A man should never boast of his courage, nor a woman of her virtue, lest their doing so should be the cause of calling their possession of them into question. Custom. Custom is a tyrant that holds us in chains, which we do not break, because so many others support them patiently. Life. Life, like the diamond in a mine, is sometimes valueless to its owner until it becomes estimated by another. Youthful lovers. Youthful lovers, like the painter Aurelius, always paint the objects of their affection as goddesses. Spring and autumn. Spring is the season of hope, and autumn is that of memory. True and false friends. False friends will seek you in a happy home, but true friends only to a prison come. Virtue. The virtues of others often render us sensible of the want of them in ourselves, as the riches of our acquaintance make us more conscious of our poverty. Marriage. How many in the married state we find wedded in person, but divorced in mind. Unnatural union. Thought with as much dread, as when the living chained were to the dead by stern Mezentius, yet less cruel he, as many slaves of high men will agree, for but one victim suffered from the chain, while wedlock gives the two an equal pain. Fates. A fate is one of the many palliatives for that common malady ennui, and, like most palliatives, gives but a temporary relief, generally followed by a return of the disease. Levelers. Men who cannot rise, are ever prone to pull down those who do, hoping to mount by their ruin. Experience. Those are fortunate who borrow experience, instead of buying it. Adversity. Adversity, 'tis thine to prove the truth of friendship or of love, thy frown can drive the false away, but makes the faithful nearer stay, thy chilling breath illusion rends, and is too cold for summer friends. Misfortunes. Misfortunes which have not been caused by our own misconduct, and which we may lay open to sympathy, are but as superficial wounds, which are easily healed, but those which guilt has produced, and shame conceals, like the stolen fox of the Spartan boy, prey on the vitals, and the pangs must be concealed, while hiding their inflictor in the breast he feeds on. Liberty. O liberty! The purest gift from heaven that ever was to erring mortals given, the heart that heaven has formed to worship thee, must be from every grovelling passion free. The patriot would thy noble precepts use, while demagogues but know thee to abuse. Age. When age is seen moving through scenes of gaiety and pleasure, its wrinkles concealed beneath a mask of paint, and its wig wreathed with flowers, it reminds one of the death's heads, which the ancients introduced at their festivals, to recall to their memories the brevity of life, and make them enjoy the present with more zest. Content. We miss content in our search for happiness. Friendship. I lost my spirits and my health, but kept my friends, so did not wince until one day I lost my wealth, and never heard of friendship since. Trials. It is when we most suffer, that we least doubt the existence of that power which can afflict or heal. Life. We pass our lives in regretting the past, complaining of the present, and indulging false hopes of the future. Love and vanity. Half the errors attributed to love have their source in vanity, and many a person has made sacrifices to this unworthy passion, who would have successfully resisted the pleadings of affection. On seeing Prince Talleyrand suffering under a severe cold. Why looks Prince Talleyrand so cold, why trembles he in every part? It is as doctors long foretold, his body's caught cold from his heart. Friends. We are often ashamed of our friends, when it is they who have cause to be ashamed of us. Pride and poverty. Pride and poverty are the most ill-assorted companions that can meet. They live in a state of continual warfare, and the sacrifices they exact from each other, like those claimed by enemies to establish a hollow peace, only serve to increase their discord. Liberty. Liberty, according to the acceptation of the term among its modern votaries, consists in the right of doing everything agreeable to themselves, and of precluding others from enjoying the same privilege. Manners. In aping the manners of foreign countries, we lose what is best in our own, and only expose ourselves to the ridicule of those we imitate. The End. New Times, York. Printed by J. P. Wright, 18, New Street. Transcriber's notes page changed from change to 67. Politics. A science, which no one believes. Politics is a science, which no one believes. Typos fixed, non-standard spelling and dialect retained. Asterisk. End of the Project Gutenberg ebook. Desultory Thoughts and Reflections. Updated editions will replace the previous one, the old editions will be renamed. Creating the works from print editions not protected by U.S. copyright law means that no one owns a United States copyright in these works. So the Foundation, and you, can copy and distribute it in the United States without permission, and without paying copyright royalties. Special rules, set forth in the general terms of use part of this license, apply to copying and distributing Project Gutenberg electronic works, to protect the Project Gutenberg concept and trademark. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark, and may not be used if you charge for an ebook, except by following the terms of the trademark license, including paying royalties for use of the Project Gutenberg trademark. If you do not charge anything for copies of this ebook, complying with the trademark license is very easy. You may use this ebook for nearly any purpose, such as creation of derivative works, reports, performances, and research. Project Gutenberg ebooks may be modified and printed and given away. You may do practically anything in the United States with ebooks not protected by U.S. copyright law. Redistribution is subject to the trademark license, especially commercial redistribution. Start. Full license. The full Project Gutenberg license. Please read this before you distribute or use this work to protect the Project Gutenberg mission of promoting the free distribution of electronic works. By using or distributing this work, or any other work associated in any way with the phrase Project Gutenberg, you agree to comply with all the terms of the full Project Gutenberg license available with this file, or online at www.gutenberg.org/license. Section 1. General Terms of Use and Redistributing Project Gutenberg Electronic Works. 1.a. By reading or using any part of this Project Gutenberg electronic work, you indicate that you have read, understand, agree to and accept all the terms of this license and intellectual property, trademark or copyright agreement. If you do not agree to abide by all the terms of this agreement, you must cease using and return or destroy all copies of Project Gutenberg electronic works in your possession. If you paid a fee for obtaining a copy of or access to a Project Gutenberg electronic work, and you do not agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement, you may obtain a refund from the person or entity to whom you paid the fee as set forth in paragraph 1.e.8. 1.b. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark. It may only be used on or associated in any way with an electronic work by people who agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement. There are a few things that you can do with most Project Gutenberg electronic works even without complying with the full terms of this agreement. See paragraph 1.c below. There are a lot of things you can do with Project Gutenberg electronic works if you follow the terms of this agreement and help preserve free future access to Project Gutenberg electronic works. See paragraph 1.e below. 1.c. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the Foundation, or PGLAF, owns a compilation copyright in the collection of Project Gutenberg electronic works. Nearly all the individual works in the collection are in the public domain in the United States. If an individual work is unprotected by copyright law in the United States, and you are located in the United States, we do not claim a right to prevent you from copying, distributing, performing, displaying or creating derivative works based on the work as long as all references to Project Gutenberg are removed. Of course, we hope that you will support the Project Gutenberg mission of promoting free access to electronic works by freely sharing Project Gutenberg works in compliance with the terms of this agreement for keeping the Project Gutenberg name associated with the work. You can easily comply with the terms of this agreement by keeping this work in the same format with its attached full Project Gutenberg license when you share it without charge with others. 1.d. The copyright laws of the place where you are located also govern what you can do with this work. Copyright laws in most countries are in a constant state of change. If you are outside the United States, check the laws of your country in addition to the terms of this agreement before downloading, copying, displaying, performing, distributing, or creating derivative works based on this work, or any other Project Gutenberg work. The Foundation makes no representations concerning the copyright status of any work in any country other than the United States. 1.e. Unless you have removed all references to Project Gutenberg, 1.e.1. The following sentence, with active links to, or other immediate access to, the full Project Gutenberg license must appear prominently whenever any copy of a Project Gutenberg work, any work on which the phrase Project Gutenberg appears, or with which the phrase Project Gutenberg is associated, is accessed, displayed, performed, viewed, copied or distributed. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away, or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook, or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. 1.e.2. If an individual Project Gutenberg electronic work is derived from texts not protected by U.S. copyright law, does not contain a notice indicating that it is posted with permission of the copyright holder, the work can be copied and distributed to anyone in the United States without paying any fees or charges. If you are redistributing or providing access to a work with the phrase Project Gutenberg associated with or appearing on the work, you must comply either with the requirements of paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7, or obtain permission for the use of the work and the Project Gutenberg trademark as set forth in paragraphs 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.3. If an individual Project Gutenberg electronic work is posted with the permission of the copyright holder, your use and distribution must comply with both paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 and any additional terms imposed by the copyright holder. Additional terms will be linked to the Project Gutenberg license for all works posted with the permission of the copyright holder found at the beginning of this work. 1.e.4. Do not unlink or detach or remove the full Project Gutenberg license terms from this work, or any files containing a part of this work, or any other work associated with Project Gutenberg. 1.e.5. Do not copy, display, perform, distribute or redistribute this electronic work, or any part of this electronic work, without prominently displaying the sentence set forth in paragraph 1.e.1 with active links, or immediate access to the full terms of the Project Gutenberg license. 1.e.6. You may convert to and distribute this work in any binary, compressed, marked up, non-proprietary, or proprietary form, including any word processing or hypertext form. However, if you provide access to or distribute copies of a Project Gutenberg work in a format other than plain vanilla ASCII, or other format used in the official version posted on the official Project Gutenberg website at www.gutenberg.org, you must, at no additional cost, fee or expense to the user, provide a copy, a means of exporting a copy, or a means of obtaining a copy upon request, of the work in its original plain vanilla ASCII, or other form. Any alternate format must include the full Project Gutenberg license, as specified in paragraph 1.e.1. 1.e.7. Do not charge a fee for access to, viewing, displaying, performing, copying or distributing any Project Gutenberg works unless you comply with paragraph 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.8. You may charge a reasonable fee for copies of or providing access to or distributing Project Gutenberg electronic works provided that you pay a royalty fee of 20% of the gross profits you derive from the use of Project Gutenberg works calculated using the method you already use to calculate your applicable taxes. The fee is owed to the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark, but he has agreed to donate royalties under this paragraph to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Royalty payments must be paid within 60 days following each date on which you prepare, or are legally required to prepare, your periodic tax returns. Royalty payments should be clearly marked as such and sent to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation at the address specified in Section 4, Information about Donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. You provide a full refund of any money paid by a user who notifies you in writing, or by email, within 30 days of receipt, that he does not agree to the terms of the full Project Gutenberg license. You must require such a user to return or destroy all copies of the works possessed in a physical medium and discontinue all use of and all access to other copies of Project Gutenberg works. You provide, in accordance with paragraph 1.f.3, a full refund of any money paid for a work or a replacement copy, if a defect in the electronic work is discovered and reported to you within 90 days of receipt of the work. You comply with all other terms of this agreement for free distribution of Project Gutenberg works. 1.e.9. If you wish to charge a fee or distribute a Project Gutenberg electronic work or group of works on different terms than are set forth in this agreement, you must obtain permission in writing from the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the manager of the Project Gutenberg trademark. Contact the Foundation as set forth in Section 3 below. 1.f.1. Project Gutenberg volunteers and employees expend considerable effort to identify, do copyright research on, transcribe, and proofread works not protected by U.S. copyright law in creating the Project Gutenberg collection. Despite these efforts, Project Gutenberg electronic works, and the medium on which they may be stored, may contain defects, such as, but not limited to, incomplete, inaccurate, or corrupt data, transcription errors, a copyright or other intellectual property infringement, a defective or damaged disk or other medium, a computer virus, or computer codes that damage or cannot be read by your equipment. 1.f.2. Limited warranty, disclaimer of damages except for the right of replacement or refund described in paragraph 1.f.3. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark, and any other party distributing a Project Gutenberg electronic work under this agreement, disclaim all liability to you for damages, costs and expenses, including legal fees. You agree that you have no remedies for negligence, strict liability, breach of warranty, or breach of contract except those provided in paragraph 1.f.3. You agree that the Foundation, the trademark owner, and any distributor under this agreement will not be liable to you for actual, direct, indirect, consequential, punitive or incidental damages even if you give notice of the possibility of such damage. 1.f.3. Limited right of replacement or refund. If you discover a defect in this electronic work within 90 days of receiving it, you can receive a refund of the money, if any, you paid for it by sending a written explanation to the person you received the work from. If you received the work on a physical medium, you must return the medium with your written explanation. The person or entity that provided you with the defective work may elect to provide a replacement copy in lieu of a refund. If you received the work electronically, the person or entity providing it to you may choose to give you a second opportunity to receive the work electronically in lieu of a refund. If the second copy is also defective, you may demand a refund in writing without further opportunities to fix the problem. 1.f.4. Except for the limited right of replacement or refund set forth in paragraph 1.f.3, this work is provided to you as is, with no other warranties of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to warranties of merchantability or fitness for any purpose. 1.f.5. Some states do not allow disclaimers of certain implied warranties, or the exclusion or limitation of certain types of damages. If any disclaimer or limitation set forth in this agreement violates the law of the state applicable to this agreement, the agreement shall be interpreted to make the maximum disclaimer or limitation permitted by the applicable state law. The invalidity or unenforceability of any provision of this agreement shall not void the remaining provisions. 1.f.6. Indemnity. You agree to indemnify and hold the foundation, the trademark owner, any agent or employee of the foundation, anyone providing copies of Project Gutenberg electronic works in accordance with this agreement, and any volunteers associated with the production, promotion and distribution of Project Gutenberg electronic works, harmless from all liability, costs and expenses, including legal fees, that arise directly or indirectly from any of the following which you do or cause to occur. A. Distribution of this or any Project Gutenberg work. B. Alteration, modification, or additions or deletions to any Project Gutenberg work. And C. Any defect you cause. Section 2. Information about the mission of Project Gutenberg. Project Gutenberg is synonymous with the free distribution of electronic works in formats readable by the widest variety of computers, including obsolete, old, middle-aged and new computers. It exists because of the efforts of hundreds of volunteers and donations from people in all walks of life. Volunteers and financial support to provide volunteers with the assistance they need are critical to reaching Project Gutenberg's goals and ensuring that the Project Gutenberg collection will remain freely available for generations to come. In 2001, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation was created to provide a secure and permanent future for Project Gutenberg and future generations. To learn more about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation and how your efforts and donations can help, see sections 3 and 4 and the Foundation information page at www.gutenberg.org. Section 3. Information about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation is a non-profit 501(c)(3) educational corporation organized under the laws of the state of Mississippi and granted tax-exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. The Foundation's EIN, or Federal Tax Identification Number, is 64-6221541. Contributions to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation are tax-deductible to the full extent permitted by U.S. federal laws and your state's laws. The Foundation's business office is located at 809 North 1500 West, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84116, 801-596-1887. Email contact links and up-to-date contact information can be found at the Foundation's website and official page at www.gutenberg.org/contact. Section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Project Gutenberg depends upon and cannot survive without widespread public support and donations to carry out its mission of increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be freely distributed in machine-readable form, accessible by the widest array of equipment, including outdated equipment. Many small donations, $1 to $5,000, are particularly important to maintaining tax-exempt status with the IRS. The Foundation is committed to complying with the laws regulating charities and charitable donations in all 50 states of the United States. Compliance requirements are not uniform, and it takes a considerable effort, much paperwork, and many fees to meet and keep up with these requirements. We do not solicit donations in locations where we have not received written confirmation of compliance. To send donations or determine the status of compliance for any particular state, visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. While we cannot and do not solicit contributions from states where we have not met the solicitation requirements, we know of no prohibition against accepting unsolicited donations from donors in such states who approach us with offers to donate. International donations are gratefully accepted, but we cannot make any statements concerning tax treatment of donations received from outside the United States. U.S. laws alone swamp our small staff. Please check the Project Gutenberg web pages for current donation methods and addresses. Donations are accepted in a number of other ways, including checks, online payments, and credit card donations. To donate, please visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. Section 5. General information about Project Gutenberg electronic works. Professor Michael S. Hart was the originator of the Project Gutenberg concept of a library of electronic works that could be freely shared with anyone. For 40 years, he produced and distributed Project Gutenberg ebooks with only a loose network of volunteer support. Project Gutenberg ebooks are often created from several printed editions, all of which are confirmed as not protected by copyright in the US unless a copyright notice is included. Thus, we do not necessarily keep ebooks in compliance with any particular paper edition. Most people start at our website, which has the main PG search facility, www.gutenberg.org. This website includes information about Project Gutenberg, including how to make donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, how to help produce our new ebooks, and how to subscribe to our email newsletter to hear about new ebooks.